Avengers Infinity War begins with a clash between Titans. The Incredible Hulk and Cosmic Warlord Thanos impact against each other with all their explosive supernatural power. These are beings that could best be visualized as two walking, talking nuclear bombs, and yet this fight seems kind of low-key, doesn't it? Don't get me wrong, the CGI and choreography is on another level, but the actual level of destruction is incredibly quaint. The entire spaceship isn't threatening to split in half from each and every impact from these monumentally powerful entities trading blows. Instead, the largest amount of destruction that occurs is this rock breaking apart. I've had fights with my little brother that were more environmentally destructive than this. Throughout all of fiction, we see characters of immense, even cosmic levels of power getting into countless fights, and yet the actual amount of destruction they show during these fights is absolutely nothing compared to the amount of power they're supposed to have according to the lore or the canon or the guidebooks or whatever. And why is this so prevalent? Why is this such a common occurrence in stories? Why are our planet busters not busting planets? We'll figure these out as we go along, but for now what you need to know is that this concept is applied to so many fictional stories, and at this point it's almost considered a trope. And interestingly, and very strangely, the communities that are aware of the concept don't seem to dislike it, but rather revere it. The concept is known as attack potency, and if you've ever known the pleasures of a woman's touch or the joys of touching grass, that's probably your first time hearing that phrase. The definition of attack potency changes depending on which shitty power scaling wiki you decide is worth the brain rot to look at in your free time. So I'll just give a very basic overview on what the entire concept is without all that pseudo-scientific versus battle wiki pretension. Attack potency is basically when extremely powerful characters launch an attack, right? And this attack, you think, okay, it's going to annihilate an entire solar system and it's heading straight for the Earth. And then it impacts against the Earth and, I don't know, a small boulder is vaporized and that's it. You see this a lot in, like, Dragon Ball when all these planet-busting characters are just smashing the ever-loving shit out of each other through mountains and stuff. You think, okay, that's pretty cool. But isn't that guy meant to be able to, like, vaporize this entire system with a blink? What's going on here? Attack potency means all your favorite characters will very, very rarely showcase said power during an actual story, and this sucks, right? Why does this happen so often? Writers don't understand the consequences of making their characters cosmically powerful. They'll give a dude an epic planet-shattering moment and think to themselves, this is sick, bro, people are gonna love this. But then they realize they still have an entire story ahead of them, and animating or writing or drawing that level of destruction for every single fight would be a monumental task, so they perform the expert writing strategy of pretending it never happened. So from then on, when writing 99% of the subsequent fight scenes, the characters will never show that level of power ever again. But that's just attack potency from the writer's side. What we also have to consider is the fans. Namely, the power scalers. I've talked in depth in other videos, I'm not sure if they're out yet, but how power scaling is used simply to wank people's favorite characters into absolutely absurd heights so they can win debates like Goku versus Superman or Hulk versus Thor. So I'm not going to get into heavy detail into it again because that would take a while and my mental health it's depleting. The bar is low. So I'm going to keep it short. Power scalers are those annoying losers that bully people who say their favorite anime character can't blow up the planet, when in chapter 13 of the Italian translation of the guidebook, it clearly states that Omoga the Dragon Emperor has destroyed entire planetary systems. And in chapter 57 of the manga, the auntie of the main character, definitely isn't the author's power fantasy self-insert, by the way. His auntie defeated the Dragon Emperor in a fight of some kind. It doesn't matter how it happens. So therefore, my favorite anime protagonist can blow up the planet with a single punch. Oh, you disagree with the facts, do you? Pseudo-intellectual, ignoramus, you. And that's a power scaler. So you have these two forces. People I could beat in a fight, and people I could beat in a fight too. They join their powers together, and the result is all your favorite very powerful characters will never ever show that power. Writers make their characters so powerful that it's impossible to feasibly showcase the true might of said characters without both literally and figuratively altering the landscape of their story. And then power scalers on the internet will rank these characters' power levels into even more extraordinary heights. So there's this massively jarring feeling when you read online about how every single character in a series is supposedly powerful enough to destroy 1 trillion galaxies with a single punch, only to watch or read or play the series and find out every single combat scene rarely goes above mounting busting bonanzas or even street tier slugfests. The Doomslayer being touted online as a multiverse annihilating entity because he killed some cosmic demon by shooting it lots in the face with a shotgun is one of my favourite examples of this, because I guess those shotgun shells are each capable of blowing up every star in the universe combined. Nobody tell the US government. Listening to power scalers feels like listening to that 1984 scene where the evil guy is trying to gaslight the protagonist into thinking he's holding up 5 fingers when he's only holding up 4. A power scaler will drill into your head over and over and over that a character is capable of annihilating octillions of planets with a mere sneeze, and in every single one of the hundreds upon hundreds of fights the character is in, never does the destruction go beyond knocking a car over, which would be similar to watching 2 ants fight in a nature documentary, whilst David Attenborough explains that the ants are emitting more energy than every single nuclear bomb on Earth combined. And when you look bewildered at this clearly incorrect statement, David Attenborough himself gropes his way out of your device's screen, grabs you by the throat, and screams in your ear, "You are a pseudo-intellectual." I've went through this gaslighting BS so many times because I am a no-life nerd that spends too much time on the internet, and that at this point, I think the gaslighting is starting to work. I think I'm insane. You know what? Yeah. Spider-Man does have a right hook, literally as powerful as the Hiroshima nuclear bomb. I'm not crazy. He's holding up 5 fingers. 5 fingers! Power scalers seem completely unsatisfied with characters like Superman, Goku, all the generic anime boys, Thor, Hulk, all the really, considered high-tier superheroes and supernatural people or whatnot. They're completely unsatisfied with them, unless they can wank them to at least the universe-busting levels of power. But if you actually read these characters' stories, with the idea, the expectation that these characters can obliterate the planet 10 octillion times over by merely blinking, you're going to be in for some mega whiplash. The goal of power scalers is to wank their favourite characters. But the funny thing is that writers very, very, very rarely adhere to power scaling logic at all. And one of my favourite examples of this comes from the beautiful website of Twitter. To set the scene, Al Ewing is the writer, he's a comic book writer, and recently he wrote the very, very amazing Immortal Hulk series, right? And fans were pestering, power scalers were pestering him on Twitter, and they were saying, oh, how powerful is the Immortal Hulk? And they just kept going on and on at him. And he was like, alright, I'll answer this. I reckon the Immortal Hulk wouldn't be able to blow up the planet without some special machinery. Anyway, good luck with your power scaling, guys. I gotta go. And the fans, they just simply ignored him, and they told him he was wrong. They told the writer of the character that he was wrong. Another funny example I have isn't Western comics, but manga. And this is Jujutsu Kaisen. You may have heard of it. So back in one of the beginning arcs, there was this pretty low-tier character that caught a bullet, right? And so the power scalers calculated this, very legitimately, I imagine, to be Ultra Giga Hypersonic Plus Mark 15, just Omega speed. And then this character was notorious because her whole thing is she has incredible reflexes, but let's just say it's Dragon Ball logic. If your speed is high, that means your power level directly scales to that. So every single character stronger than this low tier character must also be Ultra Giga Hypersonic Mark 15 plus 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 whatever, right? But then in a much later arc, this character went through a massive upgrade. So now she's actually one of the top tier characters in the series, and she got completely and utterly speed blitzed by a character going a mere Mark 3. It was like 5 to maybe even 10 times slower than what fans calculated it at. People got mad. People got really mad because they didn't understand that one, they're shit at maths, and two, writers don't care about mathematics. The amount of characters that have never even come close to blowing up a mountain being touted as multiverse annihilators is absurd. You've got Kratos, Doom Guy, Dante, and I'm sorry, I just really need to take a moment here. Characters that use guns being classified as universe busters is really funny to me. As a British man, I'll never understand the Second Amendment. How can America, as a government, as a society, allow hundreds of millions of people access to weaponry capable of vaporizing entire galactic clusters? You Americans, you fellas over the pond must have so much restraint, because every time you fire your bullets, not only are you not annihilating the Milky Way galaxy, as far as I can tell, the planet Earth is still intact. So I've dug into attack potency quite a lot. An interesting question here is, where the hell did it come from? Well, you see, Dragon Ball characters are all so immensely powerful, and Toriyama, God bless his soul, often forgot that fact. Sometimes he'd forget the existence of a character completely. So most of the time in Dragon Ball, even to this day in Dragon Ball Super, the characters are still impressed by craters created by ki blasts that are as big as a nuclear bomb's resulting crater, when characters have been blowing up entire planets 500 deific transformations ago. In order to exist with this conundrum, the Dragon Ball community injected unfathomable amounts of copium directly into their neural synapses and invented the phrase ki control, which means the characters' big boom booms are controlled. So they make small boom booms as powerful as big boom booms, but they're small, so they don't destroy the planet. Also, when a Dragon Ball character hits a guy with a planet-shattering punch directly into the planet at 10 octillion times the speed of light, this is also controlled. Canonically speaking, there's no evidence that the term ki control directly applies to this fan-made concept, but that's a whole thing, and if I make the Dragon Ball community huff any more copium, they are going to overdose. So let's pretend it's not headcanon and just keep on moving. Ki control was invented, but then the Dragon Ball fans find out there are other fictional stories out there with powerful characters with the same not able to show their true power in story problem as Dragon Ball has. So their poor little heads become rather frazzled. Ki control cannot exist in every single fictional universe, because ki control is a part of Dragon Ball's exclusive, unique power system, meaning power scalers run into a bit of a problem. It's going to be a lot harder to convince people that every single character that they're now obsessed with, from Superman to Snoopy the dog, is capable of annihilating the entire universe, when they're forced to actually show physical evidence that these characters would be able to do this thing. So it becomes harder to convince people that you're right when literally every single thing you say has to be a lie. So how about, instead of ki control being merely canon to how the system in Dragon Ball works, ki control, or shall we say attack potency, can be applied to everything, because attack potency is real. Yeah, it's a real science, and I'm sorry, we need to talk about this. Can't believe some people really need to hear this, but attack potency, or for the Dragon Ball fans, ki control, is not scientifically accurate. I know there are power scalers, the stupidity, it only stretches so far. I know it's not all of them. I'm not digging on all of you for this specific thing, but I have seen a very disturbing amount of people that try and say, oh yeah, we could apply the attack potency to this and this. It makes sense, because it actually makes sense in real life with real scientific laws. And there's been a non-zero amount of incidents where I've gotten into arguments with people over this, and non-zero is too many. So to make my initial statement, a dense, fast-moving thing of planet vaporizing proportions hitting the planet will not just knock over a single building or your little Reliant Robin. It is going to destroy the planet. I'm very sorry if you didn't want to hear that, but it's true. And I genuinely need to give the scientific reasons for this, because there are too many anime and comic book fans that genuinely believe attack potency is in any way scientific. The most common brain-dead argument I've seen in which people make the claim attack potency is realistic. The argument is that energy can diffuse before it can, expand and destroy a mountain, the earth, the solar system, or whatever. This is just wrong. It is a complete misunderstanding of the concept of diffusion. Diffusion does not stop expansion. It is expansion. Essentially, diffusion is energy spreading out, thus becoming less dense. An explosion is just spicy diffusion. If someone punched anything with nuclear levels of force, there would be nuclear levels of destruction with each punch they swung, no matter how hard the motherfucker focused. I got into a heated argument with a guy once that kept going on and on and on about how Dragon Ball Ki Blast not destroying planets makes real scientific sense, because the blasts diffuse into nothingness before they can expand and destroy the world. But diffusion is expansion. It's the changing of energy states from being in a dense, high-energy form and then spreading outwards into a less compressed form. The energy of which is less dense due to being spread out, but is of the same total energy value as its initial form. A highly compressed ball of energy capable of blowing up the planet will expand, will diffuse outward and outward and outward, causing the planet to go. And if, say, Sasuke was real, as we all dream, and he unleashed a very focused Chidori of mountain-busting power directly into your mother's house, the basement of which you currently reside within, well, you might think to yourself, as a master shinobi and a proponent of intellectualism in your own right, the Chidori is a sharp jutsu that does piercing damage. The jutsu will pierce the wall of Mama's house, but otherwise we will be... Energy can't just disappear. It has to go somewhere. This, sadly, is why Sasuke can never be real. And also, neither can attack potency. The doofuses that say otherwise are simply doofuses. There are many more arguments that are pro-attack potency equals real that I could cover here. And as a YouTuber, it is kind of my job to inform you of things. But to be honest, if you really need to listen to an entire documentary of counter-arguments to believe that anime physics isn't real physics, then you're simply a lost cause. It ain't my job to save you. There's no real-world logical excuse to include attack potency in a story. And I use the negative term excuse because that is what it is. It's an excuse. Attack potency is lazy writing. Imagine in the first Star Wars movie, there's this really tense scene where they're on the massive moon-sized space station, and Darth Vader gives the order to fire the massive laser beam at the planet Alderaan, and the stormtroopers are like clicking the switch, this is power level 1, blah 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 blah, and it's charging, and it's charging, and it's zoom zoom zoom, and it hits the planet, and the green light, it lights up the whole sky. It's just like, oh my god, what is happening? And then the laser connects, and it hits a single leaf. Hits a little leaf, and the leaf goes up in flames, and that's it. That's all that happens. And the people on the base, the people on the ground, like looking at it, oh, they're like, whoa, that was like planet annihilating super beam of ultra death. Whoa! If you were an audience back in, when did Star Wars come out? It was the 80s, right? And they saw that, they'd be like, what in the name of God was that? What does that mean? Is this some weird surreal movie? What was that meant to be metaphorical? What was that? And it's really funny because what I just described happens all the time, mainly in anime. It'll be like, oh, he's charging the Ultra Giga Death Dragon Lord of Prophecy beam, whoa! And then it will like hit a guy, and he'll like set on fire a little bit, and maybe he'll get like launched through a wall or two, and then nothing else will happen. And it's so fun. We've just become desensitized to the whole topic. If you like haven't really got deep into these communities, and you watch a lot of anime and maybe read comics or whatever, do some nerdy stuff, I imagine you have to do a little bit of that if YouTube recommended this video to you, and you've probably consumed media where this trope happens. A lot of the time you just don't notice it, and I don't know if it's because we've actually become completely desensitized to it, or maybe, I don't know, social media has ruined our brains, because it's so mad. Because if you tried doing that in the 80s, you wouldn't get away with it. You would have to animate that planet exploding, or people would be very confused. I guess the big point that I'm trying to make here today is, what is the point of making every single one of your characters cosmically powerful if that power is going to have no effect on the story, no effect on the visuals, and no effect on the world building? If your characters are never ever going to show their true power, then what was the point of making every single one of them as powerful as Superman? What is the point? What does it add to the story if it isn't in the story? All attack potency does is add inconsistencies, and it blue balls the audience, because it's basically saying, yo, my new character is so strong you can split entire galaxies in half, bro. Wow, that's awesome. Can I see it? No. Writers, if you're not willing to showcase the level of power a character has, if you're not willing to showcase the effects and repercussions of that power, then there was literally no point in giving your characters that level of power. I mean, even from like a very lowbrow, you're not trying to get super deep, you're not trying to make this super complex system, you just want some fun, dumb action. Well, what was the point of saying, oh yeah, this character can blow up the planet, if your plan was always to make it like a street level sort of action story? There was literally no point in adding that little tidbit of lore in the dialogue or guidebook or whatever, if it was literally going to have no bearing on the story whatsoever. And fans don't use attack potency as an excuse for lazy writing. You can't give writers the attack potency pass, otherwise they will get complacent and you'll get blue balled more often. You'll want, okay, I want this character to like punch each other through this and smash this. It's going to be some massive explosive Dragon Ball, just mindless, awesome nonsense. The writers won't give you that if you give them an excuse not to give you that. I'd say DC and Marvel comics are probably the most guilty of the attack potency concept. Each comic universe has like 1,000 planet busters on it, and nobody on the planet really gives much of a shit. Sometimes they kind of point it out, but you really think that every single week there are literally thousands of planet-destroying entities just beating the ever-loving shit out of each other. It's just, and it's sometimes it's like every single day there are stories where they're like characters that, oh man, I hate you, and they're just going out like Hulk versus Thor, getting into fights like just every single goddamn day, and the government is like, well, it just is what it is, I guess. And all of this, my sisters, misters, and non-binary soul shifters, leads to the ultimate consequence of attack potency, and that is power means nothing. Planet Buster, Galaxy Buster, Universe Annihilator. These words don't mean anything anymore. They don't fill you with some cosmic awe, or incite eldritch dread, or invoke bombastic gravitas. They're just labels. Labels you can slap onto anything, like big numbers in an RPG game. That doesn't actually change the visuals or the graphics or how you affect the characters in the story, other than it's a bigger number now, so the enemies with bigger numbers you can defeat. And it's gotten really bad because this has been going on for a while. The term infinite power gets slapped onto every single character and their grandmas. We've become so completely and utterly desensitized to ultimate power itself that the entire concept of infinite strength is as meaningless to us as any completely bog-standard, run-of-the-mill, non-applicable word in the English language. You could say the word hello, and it means as much as infinite, omnipotent, cosmic power. It's just completely empty at this point. Power scalers are able to slap terms like Universe Buster onto characters in even street-level stories because the whole concept of power has become completely meaningless to them. They wank characters into higher and higher stratospheres, like crack addicts taking higher and higher doses until they feel what they felt on their first hit. To power scalers, the Doomslayer, who uses guns to kill demons, being able to blow up infinity universes with a single punch makes sense to them because the footage of Doomslayer you're seeing right now means nothing to them because power isn't a visual thing or something to incite within you feelings of explosive grandeur. A cosmic power level is just a label you can tack onto anything. But luckily, enjoyers of big boom boom fight scenes, we can eat good. You just have to find the right stories. And I think the best writer for very accurately showcased high levels of power would be 1. In Mob Psycho 100, the actual level of raw power the characters have is, it is pretty big, from a real standpoint. If you've got guys blowing up buildings with single attacks, that would be concerning in real life. But compared to like a lot of comic and anime characters, how powerful they're supposed to be, and Mob Psycho 100 is actually pretty tame, but the level of animation and detail in the just sheer bombastic boom booms of every single feat of these characters makes them feel way more powerful than all the generic lackluster art anime characters punching each other through entire poorly rendered mountains. There's this one scene in Mob Psycho 100 where the main character gets really fucking pissed and he pushes a guy into the sky and he launches him back down for a building, and the building is impacted with such speed and ferocity that it begins to act like a liquid. It's like, that's actually what happened. That's actually a scientific thing. Think about it. Hypervelocity projectiles, when they hit solid objects, they can cause the solid objects, even something solid as rock and steel, to act like a liquid. And you just see how it becomes molten and just tension in its molecular bonds. You feel it and it bursts and it's just, it's so good. And then you also have the power that it's like One Punch Man. The power levels actually do get pretty high, and every single one of the punches these motherfuckers throw out is just vaporizing entire city blocks, and they launch a massive punch and splits the sky, and then I'm going to annihilate. When Boros, right, he says, I'm going to vaporize your planet's surface. Right, this isn't just dogging himself up as I can vaporize your entire planet's surface. Bro probably could, and I respect him and I believe him, because the amount of power these characters actually showcase when they get into fights makes you believe the statements as well. So it's I've dug a little bit deep. It's when you use statements and lore and guidebooks to say, the character's this level of power, it's that's not actually necessarily a bad thing. If you're actually showing the level of power a character has, and then they threaten to show that power, I'm going to wipe out your entire city, that actually increases the threat level and the poignancy of the statement. So statements are and can be used to great effect, but you need to show the power first. And the series delves into the true ramifications of cosmic power and actually showcases this ultimate application of strength. It is truly a spectacle to behold. And the greatest example of this would of course be Tengen Toppa Gurren Lagann. The final battle in TTGL has two cosmic mechs chucking galaxies at each other. I mean, look at this. Look at it. Dragon Ball characters are supposed to be at this level now, but since their fights are still only mountain-busting slugfests, and Dragon Ball characters are not galaxy busters, I don't care if Goku scales to Infinity +1 Megaversal. If all of his fights feel like fights between two mountain busters, then he may as well be just a mountain buster. Giving a character a planet-busting feat every so often, but then using attack potency as an excuse as to why the Earth doesn't explode in every battle is extremely lazy writing. If you don't want the Earth to explode, then don't give every character on the Earth planet-busting power. And if you do give them that power, and it never actually feels that they do have that power, then to the audience, they don't. I think Dragon Ball fights would have been a lot cooler if instead of Goku still only punching people through mountains, he punches through goddamn stars. You can start with mountain stuff in the Saiyan saga and then move on to dudes punching each other through planets in the Frieza saga to the Boo saga, and then Super have dudes shattering stars with every punch, and then galaxies, and then universes, and it escalates and escalates. But if it's going to escalate, at least just do us the favour of showing the escalation instead of just telling us the characters are cooler now when they're just not. And with Dragon Ball, there is kind of a problem. The characters, can't breathe in space, so if they were like punching each other through galaxies, how would they survive? My solution, I don't know, key control, whatever. Just make up another buzzword, power scalers. You're good at that. And if you're not willing to show the environmental destruction and world-building ramifications of cosmic power, then just keep your fights lower key. Your characters don't have to be able to beat Superman in order for their fights to be interesting. Case in point, Miguel versus Robbie in Cobra Kai, Aquaman versus Black Manta in Aquaman, Liu Kang versus Reptile in the Mortal Kombat movie, Spider-Man versus Tombstone in Spectacular Spider-Man, Spike versus that weird psychic man baby in Cowboy Bebop. Big power level does not equal cool or interesting. How that power is showcased is what matters. The title of this video asks, why do strong characters feel weak? And the Weenie Hut Jr. response to this question is that writers are lazy and Dragon Ball fans are menaces. But the salty spittoon-coded Giga Chad answer is that if a character doesn't feel strong, then they aren't strong. I don't care what the canon says, Goku would lose in a fight to Killer Bean, and that is a fact you're just going to have to learn to live with, because when it comes to fiction, the only facts that matter are the ones you feel.